Married to the Ruthless CEO. Main characters. Elena Marquez, 25 years old, intelligent and determined administrative assistant. She carries emotional scars and comes from a family on the brink of bankruptcy, which motivates her to enter the business marriage with Damian. Damian Blackwell, 33 years old, cold, calculating and ruthless CEO. A powerful businessman with dark secrets from his past. Initially uninterested in love, he slowly falls for Elena, Sophie Lang, Damian's primary antagonist, a cunning and relentless rival who tries to sabotage Damian's empire and marriage through manipulation, leaks and false allegations. Isabella, a woman from Damian's past, his first love. Her unexpected return shakes Damian and Elena's marriage, stirring unresolved emotions and complicating their path forward. Elena Marquez is a smart and determined administrative assistant whose family is on the brink of bankruptcy. Desperate to save them, she agrees to marry Damian Blackwell, a ruthless and powerful CEO known for his cold, calculating nature and dark secrets. What starts as a business arrangement soon turns complicated as hidden pasts, fierce rivals, and unexpected feelings come to light. Faced with manipulation from Damian's cunning rival Sophie Lang, the return of his first love Isabella, and the pressures of a high-stakes corporate world, Elena and Damian must navigate a dangerous game of trust, betrayal, and passion. Will their fragile marriage survive the storms of ambition, lies, and forbidden love? Or will the ruthless world they live in tear them apart forever? Married to the Ruthless CEO is a gripping, emotional romance full of drama, suspense, and slow-burning passion that will keep you hooked until the last page. The contract. The rain fell like whispers on glass, soft but relentless, as Elena Marquez stepped out of the taxi in front of Blackwell Industries. Her heels clicked nervously against the polished marble floor of the lobby, each step echoing her rising anxiety. She had worn her best dress, simple, black, modest, but nothing could hide the trembling in her hands or the fear that threatened to choke her. This wasn't a job interview, it was a proposal. Not for love, but for survival. She walked to the front desk, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have an appointment with Mr. Blackwell, Elena Marquez." The receptionist barely glanced at her before pressing a button. "Take the private elevator. Top floor. He's expecting you." The top floor felt like a different world. Quiet, cold, intimidating. Damian Blackwell's office was all glass and steel, a throne above the city. And he, seated behind his massive desk, was as sharp and unreadable as the empire he ruled. He didn't stand when she entered, didn't smile, just lifted his gaze slowly, dark eyes landing on her like a judge weighing a sentence. "You're late." "I'm sorry," she breathed, clutching her bag. "The traffic and... I don't care." The room went silent. She felt the weight of him, his presence, his power. Damian Blackwell wasn't just a CEO. He was a force, ruthless in business, cold in demeanour. And now, the man offering her a deal that would change her life. He leaned back, folding his hands. "You said you'd do anything to help your father." Elena swallowed. Her father's debts were drowning them. Her little brother was still in school, their home, on the verge of foreclosure. "Yes," she said, her voice steadying. "Anything." Damian rose, walking around the desk slowly. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and dangerously calm. When he stopped just inches from her, she instinctively took a step back. "I need a wife." The words struck her like thunder. "A wife?" He nodded once. "Temporary. 1 year, public appearances, a few private events, nothing more." "But why?" "Board pressure. Reputation management. There's an acquisition deal on the line and they want to see stability, family values, a ring on my finger." Elena's chest tightened. "And you thought of me?" "I don't mix business with pleasure," he said bluntly. "But I need someone quiet, discreet. Poor enough not to ask questions and desperate enough not to say no." Her cheeks flushed with humiliation, but she didn't deny it. She was desperate. "What do you get?" she asked softly. "Control. And what do I get? He moved closer, his voice like ice. Your father's debts will disappear, your house, saved, your brother's tuition, paid in full, and when it ends, a generous sum. Enough to start over, somewhere far away. Eleanor's hands trembled. And if I say no? He shrugged. Then you walk out of here, and in 3 months, your father's company will be seized, your home will be gone, and the only thing left will be the silence of regret. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Is there a contract? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. He handed her a thick folder. You can read it, or you can sign it. Either way, you have until midnight. She stared at the pen. This wasn't a marriage. It was a transaction. A cold-blooded business arrangement. But she had no other choice. She signed. The wedding without a kiss. The ink was still fresh on the contract when Damian's assistant appeared at the door. Sir, the legal team has confirmed everything. The ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow at noon. The press will be notified post-event as instructed. Tomorrow? Elena blinked, startled. That soon? Damian didn't even glance at her. You wanted your father's debts gone. That requires speed. She nodded, heart pounding, the folder still clutched in her hands like a lifeline, or a death sentence. The next morning came far too quickly. The bridal boutique had sent over 3 options. Eleanor picked the simplest gown, a white silk sheath that hugged her curves without trying to impress. There was no joy in the dressing room, no excited friends, no laughter, only silence, and a pair of strangers sent to fix her hair and makeup. You look lovely, Miss Marquez, one of them said kindly. But Elena didn't feel lovely. She felt bought. The ceremony took place in Damian's private estate, grand, cold, immaculate, just like the man himself. Only 5 people were present, the officiant, 2 witnesses, Damian and Elena. She stood opposite him beneath a vaulted skylight, sunlight pouring down on marble and gold. Damian wore a black tailored suit, expression unreadable, voice clipped when he said, I do. When it was her turn, her hands trembled as she whispered the words back. I do. There was no kiss, just a nod. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and the moment passed like a business transaction, clean, cold, complete. No music, no celebration, no flowers, just silence and a binding contract. After the signatures, Damian turned to her. You'll move into the penthouse tonight. My assistant will give you the access codes. Elena blinked. Tonight? You're my wife now, Elena. It's time you lived like it. The penthouse was like something out of a magazine, glass walls overlooking the city, sleek furniture, chrome finishes. But it felt like a museum. Beautiful, empty, cold. She walked through the space in a daze. One bedroom, his. Another room, smaller, had been prepared for her. Not a guest room exactly, but separate. Clear boundaries, clear roles. She unpacked her single suitcase and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the city lights flickering in the distance. What had she done? Later that evening, a knock startled her. It was Damian holding a glass of whiskey. You signed the contract, he said, stepping inside uninvited. But this only works if you play your role. She stood up. I know. Do you? His eyes narrowed. There will be public appearances, dinners, events. You will smile, you will pretend, and you will not embarrass me. And what happens if I do? She asked softly. He took a sip of his drink. Then this ends badly. For both of us. She met his gaze. Why me, Damian? Why not someone you trust? His expression flickered almost imperceptibly. Because trust is a liability, and you have nothing to lose. That makes you reliable. The cruelty of it stung. Good night, Eleanor, he said, turning away. Good night, Mr. Blackwell. He paused. You don't need to call me that anymore." "What should I call you then?" He looked over his shoulder, eyes like steel. "Call me whatever you want. Just remember what we are." And with that, he disappeared down the hallway, leaving Elena standing alone, his wife in name, his prisoner in silence. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a ring on her finger, a storm in her heart. Somewhere in the darkness, Damian Blackwell, her husband, slept in the next room. Or maybe he didn't sleep at all, because monsters didn't need rest. And she was starting to wonder what kind of man she had married. A wife on display. The silence between them was louder than any fight. By the time Friday evening came, Elena had memorized every inch of the penthouse, every cold surface, every luxury that felt like a cage. Damian had spoken to her only twice since the wedding, both times issuing instructions like a general briefing a soldier. Now she stood in front of a full-length mirror in the master bedroom, wearing the deep crimson gown that had been delivered earlier that morning. High slit, open back, silk so fine it felt like liquid fire against her skin. "Too much," she muttered under her breath. But Damian's voice from the doorway was unflinching. "Perfect." She turned sharply. He stood behind her in a black tuxedo, his gaze moving slowly over her body with something that wasn't quite desire, but wasn't cold either. She crossed her arms. "This feels like a costume." "It is," he replied. "We're performing tonight. Smile when I speak to you. Laugh when others speak to me. And don't forget, everyone in that room will be watching you, especially the ones who want to see us fail." She swallowed her retort. "Understood." Damian offered his arm, formal and distant. She hesitated a beat before taking it. When their skin touched, she felt the strangest sensation, not comfort, not warmth, but electricity. Unwelcome, unspoken, unavoidable. The charity gala was held at the Montclair Grand Hotel, limestone pillars, crystal chandeliers, and the kind of guests who drank champagne like water and destroyed companies over dessert. Elena had never felt more out of place, but when they entered, all eyes turned to them. "The Blackwells," someone whispered. "She's stunning," murmured another. Elena held her head high, her hand resting lightly on Damian's arm as they descended the staircase. Cameras flashed, smiles were exchanged. Every move was choreographed. He leaned down, lips close to her ear. "Now, Mrs. Blackwell, let's make them believe we're madly in love." His breath against her skin made her shiver. She smiled. The practiced kind. The one that didn't reach her eyes. "Madly," she echoed. For 2 hours, she played her part. She laughed. She complimented. She stood at his side while billionaires toasted to false friendships and enemies in designer suits asked loaded questions. But it was during the waltz that something shifted. Damian held her hand, guiding her effortlessly across the dance floor, their bodies aligned. The room spun gently around them. And for the first time, Elena forgot it was a performance. His hand rested low on her back. His fingers tightened slightly when she stumbled. "You're nervous," he said quietly. "Maybe I'm just not used to pretending." He looked down at her, something unreadable in his eyes. "You'll get used to it." "But will you?" she asked softly. A flicker, there and gone. She pressed her luck. "Have you ever loved anyone, Damian?" His jaw tightened. "No. Not even your ex?" The temperature between them dropped 10 degrees. "Don't mention her again," he said through clenched teeth. But she'd seen it, the way his hand had stiffened, the pain hidden behind the ice. There was something there, something broken. She almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Later that night, back at the penthouse, Elena kicked off her heels and reached behind her back to unzip the dress. Her fingers trembled. "Let me," Damian said suddenly behind her. She froze. His hands were steady, precise. He unzipped the gown slowly, the sound deafening in the quiet room. The fabric slipped from her shoulders, exposing the curve of her back. He didn't touch her, but she could feel the tension in the air, like a thunderstorm waiting to break. She turned slightly, looking up at him. "Why are you really doing this?" His gaze locked onto hers. "Because control is the only thing I trust." "And what happens if you lose it?" she whispered. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, without answering, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, with a bare back, a racing heart, and the terrifying realization that the man she had married wasn't as heartless as he wanted the world to believe. He was just hiding from something much deeper, and she wasn't sure she was ready to find out what. Cracks in the ice. The next morning, Elena woke before sunrise. Damian's side of the penthouse was silent. She hadn't seen him since he walked away from her half-undressed body the night before. Not that she expected warmth, but something had changed in his eyes. A flicker of emotion, a shadow of pain. She wrapped herself in a robe and walked into the kitchen, finding a breakfast already prepared. Eggs, toast, coffee, just like the day before. But this time, there was a small note beside the plate. "Be ready by 9. We're visiting your father's company." D. Her stomach turned. He was making good on his promise, clearing her father's debts, restoring the company. But why did it feel like a noose tightening instead of a blessing? They didn't speak in the car. Damian sat with his laptop open, fingers moving rapidly over the keyboard. Elena sat beside him, trying not to let her nerves show. His driver cut through the city with sharp precision, the silence between them louder than any words. When they arrived at Marquez Textiles, her father's old office building looked smaller than she remembered, worn down, faded, forgotten. Her chest ached at the sight. Inside, her father was waiting, pacing nervously until he saw her. "Elena," Hector breathed, pulling her into a tight hug. You look like your mother." She smiled faintly. "She would have been proud of you. You built this place from nothing." He glanced over her shoulder at Damian, who entered the room like a storm, impeccably dressed, completely in control. "I trust everything is in order," Damian said flatly, not offering a handshake. Yes, of course," Hector stammered. "The contracts are ready for review. Thank you for doing this." "I don't know how to repay." "You don't," Damian cut in. "Your daughter already has." Elena stiffened. Her father blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. But Damian's eyes were elsewhere, on the framed photos on the wall, the dusty shelves, the file cabinet with a broken handle. He looked out of place here, like a predator among relics. Yet something in his gaze softened. Only for a moment. "This place has history," Damian murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "And ghosts." Before Elena could ask what he meant, he turned on his heel and left the room, already on the phone with someone else. Later, while Damian met with the lawyers, Elena wandered the building alone. Every corner held a memory, her as a child, sitting at her father's desk, playing with typewriter keys. Her mother bringing lunch, the smell of ink and fabric and love. She ended up in the basement, where old archives were kept. Dust floated in the beams of light. Forgotten blueprints and ledgers were stacked high. And then, in a box marked Confidential, 1998, she found something that didn't belong. A black and white photo of a much younger Damian Blackwell, with a woman beside him. Her face was blurred by age, but the resemblance was unmistakable. It was her mother. Elena's heart dropped. What the hell was her mother doing in a photo with Damian Blackwell? She stared at the date. April 1998. The year before her mother died. She slipped the photo into her coat just as she heard footsteps upstairs. That night, she confronted him. The moment he stepped into the penthouse, she was waiting, hair down, eyes sharp, the photo in her hand. "Care to explain this?" she asked. Damian froze. His eyes fell on the photograph and something inside him broke. "I warned you not to ask questions," he said quietly. "And I told you I don't like lies," she shot back. He stepped forward slowly, gaze like a blade. "Where did you find it?" "In my father's office, in a file marked Confidential. Care to tell me why my mother was photographed with you?" Silence. Then, just 3 words. She saved me. Elena blinked. What? Damian turned away, pacing to the window. The city lights cast his reflection like a ghost in the glass. I was 17, on the edge of becoming something worse than I am now. Your mother worked in the legal department at my father's firm. She caught me forging something, and instead of turning me in, she sat me down and asked one question. Elena waited. Who taught you that no one would care if you failed? Damian whispered. She was the first person who ever saw the damage, not just the danger. Elena's throat tightened. I didn't know she had a family, he continued. I only saw her once after that. She transferred offices. When I heard she died, His voice cracked. Elena stepped closer. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because the only thing more dangerous than telling the truth is feeling something because of it. He turned to face her, and for the first time since they met, he didn't look ruthless. He looked human. Later, alone in her room, Elena stared at the ceiling again, but this time her mind raced with questions. Why had he chosen her? Was it really coincidence? Or had he known all along? If this was just business, why did it suddenly feel like destiny? Pretending to burn Damian didn't speak to her for 2 days. Not because he was angry, but because something had been exposed between them. Something raw, something neither of them could name. Elena went about her days in silence, learning how to navigate the penthouse, reviewing the schedule his assistant emailed her each morning, attending language coaching, etiquette briefings, fashion consults. He was crafting her into the perfect wife, the perfect lie. But at night, when the city fell quiet and she lay awake in her separate room, she thought of what he had said. She saved me. Those words echoed louder than any vow. On the 3rd morning, she was sipping coffee when Damian appeared in the doorway, already dressed in another flawless suit, his expression unreadable. We have a problem, he said. She looked up. What kind of problem? He tossed a tablet onto the marble island. On the screen, a tabloid headline. Blackwell marriage under scrutiny. Is the Ice King's bride a paid actor? Her chest tightened. The article featured photos from the gala, including one where Damian's hand was barely touching her waist, his expression icy. The board's furious, he said. Investors are nervous. Valeria Monroe is using this to raise doubts about the merger. Elena's stomach sank. Valeria, your ex? She's trying to paint this marriage as a fraud, which means we need to play the part harder. How much harder? She asked carefully. Damian walked around the island and handed her a red envelope. Inside, a formal invitation. Weekend retreat, Blackwell Executive Circle, private estate, Napa Valley. You're coming, he said. We leave tonight. She blinked. Tonight? There will be press, donors, board members, and Valeria. Elena frowned. You think I can handle all of that? I think, he said slowly, you're stronger than you realise. The words caught her off guard. No sharpness, no control, just a glimpse of belief. She nodded. I'll be ready. The estate in Napa Valley was a world of vineyards, candlelit dinners and tailored lies. Damian and Elena arrived by private car, met by cameras and champagne. Every touch had to look effortless, every glance real. He placed his hand gently on her back as they entered. The gesture looked affectionate, but Elena felt the heat beneath it. It wasn't just for show anymore. Their room had 1 bed. Of course it did. She said nothing, just set down her bag and stared out the window at the hills soaked in gold. Damian poured 2 glasses of wine. When he handed her one, their fingers brushed. Something passed between them. Neither spoke of it. That night, during dinner under fairy lights and string quartets, Valeria made her move. She was elegance wrapped in poison, red lips, sharp eyes, a dress designed to steal attention. So, this is the new Mrs. Blackwell, she purred, taking a seat beside them without invitation. Elena smiled politely. "It's lovely to meet you." Valeria's eyes glittered. "I must say, Damian, I didn't expect you to marry so quickly, or so quietly. Tell me, Elena, how did you two meet?" Before Elena could answer, Damian placed his hand over hers. "Our paths crossed at the exact wrong time," he said softly, eyes never leaving Elena's. "Which made it exactly right." Elena's breath caught. Was that rehearsed? Or real? Valeria arched a brow. "How poetic." "It wasn't poetry," Damian said. "It was inevitability." Elena could barely breathe. His hand stayed on hers until Valeria, clearly annoyed, rose and drifted off. When she was gone, Elena turned to him. "You didn't have to say all that." "I know." "Then why did you?" His voice lowered. "Because for the first time in a very long time, I wanted to." She stared at him. No script, no cameras, just truth, or something that felt dangerously close to it. Later that night, in the room with only one bed, Elena stood at the window in silence. Damian entered, loosening his tie. "I can sleep on the couch," he offered. She turned to him. "No need. The bed is big enough." He nodded, walked to the far side, and lay down, fully clothed. She slipped under the covers, facing away from him, heart racing. In the darkness, his voice broke the silence. "She would have been proud of you." Elena closed her eyes. "Who?" "Your mother." Silence again, but not empty. Full. Heavy. Alive. Elena didn't sleep for a long time. Not because she was afraid of Damian, but because she wasn't anymore, and that terrified her more than anything else. The kiss that shouldn't have happened. The morning air was crisp and clean, the vineyards outside their window painted in hues of green and gold. Birds chirped softly in the distance, but inside the room, silence reigned, tense and fragile. Elena sat at the edge of the bed, brushing her hair. Damian was still in the shower. She could hear the sound of water, steady and controlled, just like him. Last night hadn't meant anything. They had shared a bed, but not a moment. Not really. And yet... Her heart wouldn't slow down. When he emerged, dressed in a charcoal button-down and no tie, he paused for a moment when he saw her in the mirror. She was wearing one of the silk dresses his assistant had packed for her. Blue, bare shoulders, a little too elegant for breakfast, but it didn't escape him. "You look..." He cleared his throat. "Appropriate." "Not exactly a compliment," she murmured. He almost smiled. Almost. Downstairs, guests mingled near the outdoor terrace. It was supposed to be a casual brunch, but in this world nothing was casual. Every smile was a strategy, every compliment a veiled threat. Elena played her part. She smiled at investors. She laughed when she was supposed to. She rested her hand on Damian's arm, even though the contact sent currents up her spine. Then she saw Valeria, holding court at the edge of the garden, surrounded by journalists, and one of them, Elena's stomach twisted, was holding a small voice recorder, nodding as Valeria spoke in hushed tones. "I'm just saying," Valeria said sweetly, "isn't it curious that he married her so quickly, and how little we know about her, where she came from, who she really is? Sometimes when something looks too perfect, it's because it is." The implication was razor sharp. Elena moved closer. "Is there a problem?" she asked calmly. Valeria turned, feigning surprise. "Oh, I didn't see you there." "I'm sure," Elena replied. The journalist looked between them, uncomfortable. "Mrs. Blackwell, is it true you and Mr. Blackwell had a whirlwind romance? There are rumours." Damian appeared behind Elena like a shadow. "There are always rumours," he said flatly, "but this one ends now." He took Elena's hand and laced his fingers through hers, public, intentional, and then... He kissed her. Full, deep, purposeful. Gasps rose around them. Cameras clicked, but all Elena could feel was the pressure of his mouth against hers, the warmth, the intensity, the way her heart seemed to fall out of rhythm entirely. It wasn't for show. At least, not entirely. When he pulled away, he didn't say a word, just led her inside, away from the stairs, the questions, the noise. Back in their room, the door closed behind them with a quiet click. Elena stood frozen. "Why did you do that?" "You heard what she was saying." "That wasn't a kiss to silence a rumour," she said, voice trembling. "That was something else." Damian said nothing for a moment. Then finally, "I didn't plan it." She stared at him. "Is that supposed to make it better?" "No," he said. "It's supposed to make it real." The silence stretched. She stepped closer, searching his eyes. "You're not supposed to care. Remember?" He looked away. "I don't care," he said softly. "I can't." "You keep saying that, but your actions say something else." Damian's jaw tightened, his hands curled into fists. "I built my life around control, around keeping things clean, safe, predictable." He looked at her. "You are none of those things." Eleanor's breath caught. Her heart was screaming, but her voice was steady. "And yet you chose me." He stepped closer, close enough to touch, but didn't. "Maybe I made a mistake," he whispered. "Maybe you didn't," she whispered back. Then the phone rang, sharp, shrill, cold. Damian answered. His face changed instantly. "What?" he barked. "How? Who authorized I'll be there in 20. He hung up, eyes dark, jaw clenched. "What happened?" Elena asked. He looked at her like he had just remembered who he was supposed to be. "Valeria," he said. "She leaked the marriage contract." Elena's blood ran cold. The entire foundation of their lie, their arrangement, was now public. Everything was about to collapse. And this time, not even a kiss could save them. When truth becomes a weapon, the Blackwell penthouse had never felt more suffocating. Less than 24 hours after returning from Napa, the entire city buzzed with headlines. Marriage for sale, Blackwell contract exposed. Love or leverage, Elena Marquez named in CEO marriage deal. Ex-fiancé speaks, Valeria Monroe confirms suspicious timing. Every article twisted the story. Every photo dissected their expressions, the kiss, the smiles, the appearances. Everything was now evidence in a public trial neither of them had agreed to attend. And worst of all, the contract was real. Elena sat on the edge of the cream leather couch, watching the news coverage in silence. Her name was everywhere, her past dragged into the spotlight. People were speculating about her motives, her family, her morality, as if she had sold herself for power, as if she hadn't done it for the people she loved. When Damian walked into the room, she didn't look at him. He stood silently for a moment before asking, "Are you okay?" She turned slowly, her voice sharp. "You have to ask?" His jaw flexed. "I didn't leak it." "I know you didn't. But she did. And she only got that close because we let her." He crossed his arms. "She's not the problem." "Then what is?" Elena asked. "The media? You're bored? Me?" "No." His voice lowered. "Us." The word lingered in the air like smoke. Us, not contract, not arrangement, not lie. Us. Elena stood, fire rising in her chest. There was never supposed to be an us, remember? That's what you wanted. Control, coldness, a wife you didn't have to feel anything for. He stepped closer, his eyes burning. And now look where we are. She held his gaze. "What do you feel, Damian? What are you so afraid of?" But instead of answering, he turned away. Hours later, the boardroom was filled with tension. Damian sat at the head of the table, surrounded by men and women in suits who barely concealed their contempt. "You lied to your investors," one of them snapped. You staged a marriage to manipulate acquisition optics. This is fraud, Damian. The contract was legal, Damian replied coldly. There was no fraud. But it was a deception, another board member said. And now we've lost leverage. Valeria's company is gaining ground. Half our partners are reconsidering their stakes. The room buzzed with fury, with words like ethics, reputation, termination. Then someone said it out loud. If this doesn't get cleaned up immediately, we'll be forced to demand your resignation. Damian's eyes narrowed. I don't answer to threats. The board chair leaned forward. Then give us a reason not to act. Make this go away. How? The answer came from the assistant who entered the room at that moment, holding a phone. There's a press conference scheduled tomorrow morning. Everyone will be watching. The implication was clear. Fix the narrative, or lose everything. That night, Damian sat alone in the penthouse's glass-walled study, staring out at the city. His empire, his legacy, everything he had built, now hanging by a thread. And all because he had tried to protect his walls by building a lie. But the lie had a heartbeat, and her name was Elena. She stepped into the room quietly, unsure whether she should speak. Her anger had faded into exhaustion, and behind all the chaos, one truth lingered in her heart. She didn't regret marrying him. Not anymore. You're going to speak to the press? She asked softly. He nodded once. And what are you going to say? I don't know yet. She walked to him, standing by his side, looking down at the city lights. You could tell them the truth. That it was fake? He asked bitterly. No, she said, that it started fake, but it didn't stay that way. He turned to her sharply. You'd let them think this is real? Her eyes met his. Would it really be such a lie? Silence. Then slowly he reached for her hand. Not for show, not for control, just to feel it, to feel her. I can survive a scandal, he said, his voice low. But I don't know if I can survive losing you. Her breath caught, and in that moment, the contract no longer mattered. There was no business deal, no performance, just a man, broken, guarded, finally reaching for something real. And a woman who was willing to catch him when he did. The next morning, the world waited. And Damian Blackwell walked up to the microphone, not as the ruthless CEO the world feared, but as the man who had fallen in love with his wife. The night after the storm. The conference room was packed. Cameras lined the back wall. Journalists scribbled notes, hungry for a headline. Damian stood tall at the podium, his crisp navy suit flawless, every inch the CEO, but his expression was no longer ice. Elena stood just behind him, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, her gaze steady. There were whispers, flashes, tension so thick it pressed against her chest. Damian cleared his throat. The room fell silent. There's been a lot of speculation about my marriage, he began. Some of it exaggerated, some of it true. I want to address it now, personally. A pause. The cameras leaned in. When I married Elena Marquez, it started as a strategic decision. Yes, one rooted in legal necessity during a merger that demanded stability in both leadership and image. Murmurs rippled across the room. Eleanor's heart clenched. But what wasn't in that contract, he continued, voice deepening, was the way she changed everything. Another silence. I didn't expect to care, he confessed, but I do. I married her because I needed someone on paper. I'm standing here now because I need her. Period. There was a collective gasp. Even Elena felt breathless. I won't apologise for falling in love with my wife, Damian said simply. And I won't undo this marriage to appease anyone's comfort. If anyone wants to pull their investment because I've become a human being instead of a machine, there's the door. It wasn't a press statement. It was a declaration, and it shook the room. He stepped away from the podium and reached for Eleanor's hand without hesitation. She let him, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. As they walked out of the conference together, arm in arm, Elena felt something she hadn't in days. Power. Not the kind that came from wealth or reputation, but the kind born of truth. Hours later, the penthouse was quiet again. The chaos had died down. The internet had exploded. Some called the conference damage control. Others called it a bold move. But the whispers had changed tone. Real love was trending, and for the first time so was Elena Marquez, not as a gold digger or a fake wife, but as someone who had somehow melted the coldest man in the city. Elena stood on the balcony, the night breeze cooling her flushed skin. Behind her, Damian approached silently, stopping just close enough to feel his presence at her back. "You didn't have to do that," she said, her voice low. "I did," he replied, "not just for the company, for us." She turned to face him. "Then tell me something you haven't admitted yet, something real." He hesitated, then stepped closer. "When you first walked into my office, I thought you were too soft for this world, too gentle, too emotional. I thought I could control everything, including how close you'd get." Her breath hitched. "I was wrong," he said, his voice husky. "You're the only thing I can't control." Their eyes locked. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I don't want to fight this anymore, Elena." Neither did she. So when he leaned in, she didn't resist. Their kiss was slow, reverent, nothing like the staged performances of the past. It was raw, honest, unscripted. Later that night, under the dim glow of the bedroom light, the contract burned slowly in the fireplace. A page at a time. Elena watched it curl and blacken, the clauses and signatures disappearing into ash. Damian stood behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist. "No more pretending," he murmured against her skin. She nodded. No more rules. They made love that night without boundaries, without conditions, without fear. And afterward, tangled in each other's arms, Elena realized something terrifying. She wasn't just falling for him. She had already fallen, deep, irrevocably, painfully. And for the first time, she didn't want to run. But love, as she would soon learn, wasn't always enough to stop the ghosts of the past. Especially when one of those ghosts was about to return, with proof that the marriage wasn't the only thing Damian had been hiding. The photograph that shouldn't exist. The morning after was quiet, deceptively so. Elena woke first, the sunlight slipping through the tall windows of the penthouse. Damian was still asleep beside her, his arm draped over her waist, his breathing even. He looked peaceful, softer than she'd ever seen him. She pressed a gentle kiss to his shoulder, slipped out of bed, and walked barefoot to the kitchen. The floor was cold beneath her feet, but something about the silence felt warm, like possibility, like the start of something real. Her phone buzzed on the counter. One message. Unknown number. "You think he's yours now?" Think again. Attached. A photo. Elena's blood turned to ice. She clicked the image, and her breath caught in her throat. It was a picture of Damian, holding a woman. Not just any woman. Beautiful, blonde, wearing nothing but a silk robe, sitting on the edge of his bed. In this penthouse. The timestamp was from 2 months ago. The date burned into her memory. It was 2 days after their wedding. Her hands shook as she zoomed in. There was no mistaking it, the way the woman leaned into him, the familiarity in his touch, and the look on Damian's face, relaxed, slightly smiling, not forced, not cold, intimate. Elena couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Was it before he started caring about her? Did it even matter? The door creaked open behind her. Damian appeared, shirtless, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Hey," he said, voice rough from sleep. "Why are you up so—" He stopped when he saw her face, and then he saw the phone in her hand. Her arm was stiff as she handed it to him, his jaw clenched as he looked at the screen. "Elena, when were you going to tell me?" Her voice was quiet, too quiet. He exhaled slowly. "It's not what it looks like. They always say that. I was going to end it," he said. "I had ended it. Before it felt real between us." She blinked, tears threatening. "So it was real, just not for me." "No," he said firmly, stepping forward. "She was from the past. Elena, you're the only thing in my life that feels like a future." "But you lied." "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you. That's the same thing," she snapped, stepping back. A silence fell between them. Damian's expression tightened. "I didn't tell you because I knew this would happen. I was afraid of losing what we had." "Then maybe you shouldn't have risked it in the first place." Her words cut through the morning like a blade. He looked away. Elena's heart cracked in places she hadn't known existed, not just because he had slept with someone else, but because he hadn't trusted her with the truth. "Do you still see her?" she whispered. "No," he said instantly. "I haven't. I wouldn't. I never will." She wanted to believe him, but the photo wouldn't leave her mind, neither would the message. "You think he's yours now? Think again." "Who sent this?" she asked. "I don't know," Damian replied, jaw tightening. "But I'll find out." She nodded slowly, then walked past him toward the guest bedroom. "Elena," he called after her, but she didn't stop. She needed air. She needed time. She needed to understand whether the hurt came from the betrayal, or the fact that she had fallen in love with someone who might never stop hiding pieces of himself. Hours passed. Damian paced his office, frustration radiating from him. He had his tech team trace the message. It was sent from a burner phone, untraceable, but he had a good idea who was behind it. Sophie Lang, the woman in the photo, an old flame, beautiful, vicious, entitled. She had wanted more than he could ever offer, more than sex, more than control. She had wanted to be his wife. When he told her it was over, that he had made a business marriage arrangement instead, she had smiled and said, "You'll regret choosing a nobody over me, Damian." Apparently she'd meant it. He texted his head of security, "Find Sophie Lang, now." But even if he found her, what would he say to Elena? How could he fix this? How do you undo a heartbreak you caused? That night, Elena stood in front of the mirror in the guest room, her eyes red but dry. She didn't cry like she used to. Not anymore. She didn't leave either. That was the most dangerous part, because even now, especially now, she still wanted him, still loved him. But trust, once broken, wasn't easy to rebuild. And tomorrow would bring a new headline, a bigger storm, one neither of them were ready for, because the photo was just the beginning. The trap is set. The city was already buzzing with rumours again. Elena knew she should be bracing herself, but the exhaustion was catching up to her. Every morning brought a fresh headline, a new whisper, a fresh stab at her reputation. The photo was just the start. Now Sophie Lang was everywhere, in the tabloids, the online forums, even whispering through Damian's boardroom like a poison. And worse, Sophie had started showing up, at events, at Damian's favourite restaurants, even near Elena's office, like a shadow no one could shake. Damian's frustration was palpable. In the sleek Blackwell Tower office, he slammed his hand on the polished desk. "She's playing a dangerous game." Elena sat across from him, arms crossed, exhausted but determined. "What's the plan?" "We find her," Damian said coldly, "and we end this." "But Sophie knows more than just the photo," Elena warned. "She's got dirt on you, something bigger." He didn't answer, because he knew she was right. The next evening, Elena was finishing late at the publishing house where she worked. She locked her office door, her heart racing every time she heard footsteps in the hall. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Careful, Elena. Not everyone wants this marriage to survive." Her blood ran cold. She showed Damian immediately. His face darkened. It's a warning. From Sophie. That night, Damian insisted on driving her home. On the way, the car was quiet except for the low hum of the engine. Elena's voice broke the silence. Why does she hate me so much? Damian's eyes were fixed on the road. Because you took what she wanted. And what about me? She asked quietly. What if I'm the one who loses? He glanced at her, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his usual coldness. You won't. But the next morning shattered that promise. Elena woke to a video message waiting on her phone. Her hands trembled as she pressed play. The screen showed Sophie, leaning against Damian's penthouse doorframe, eyes cold and fierce. This isn't over, Elena, Sophie said. You think you're safe behind his walls? Think again. Before the video ended, Sophie reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope, marked confidential. I have what I need to take him down. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. She wasn't sure what scared her more, Sophie's threats or the fact that Damian hadn't told her about this before. That afternoon, Elena confronted Damian in the penthouse. You need to tell me everything, she demanded. What does Sophie have? What else are you hiding? Damian looked at her with an intensity she hadn't seen before. It's complicated. Then explain it to me. He hesitated, then nodded. There's a reason I've kept my distance from you. From everything. He took a deep breath. My father's company. It's not just about textiles. There's a shadow side. Investments in things I'm not proud of. Things that could ruin us both if they come out. Elena's stomach churned. So Sophie is holding that over you? Yes. Why didn't you say anything? Because I thought I could fix it alone. Her voice softened. You don't have to. He reached for her hand. But I don't want to drag you into that world. She gripped his hand tighter. You already are. That night, as the city lights flickered outside their windows, Elena and Damian sat side by side, not as enemies or allies, but as two people standing on the edge of something dangerous and unknown. We have to fight, Elena said, voice steady despite the fear inside. Damian nodded. Together. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt alone. Fighting shadows. The war with Sophie had begun. Elena felt it in every glance from the press, every whispered conversation in the halls of Blackwell Tower, every cold look from unfamiliar faces. The whispers weren't just about the marriage anymore, they were about her. She was a target, and she had to fight back. Damian had been quiet all morning, his usual sharp edge replaced with something heavier. Concern, worry, even guilt. When Elena found him in the boardroom late afternoon, he was staring at a folder thick with documents. What's the latest? She asked. He didn't look up. Sophie has more than I thought. Financial records, emails, even a few of my father's old deals. Elena swallowed hard. What are we going to do? We expose her first, Damian said with cold determination. I won't let her ruin everything. Elena nodded. I want to help. No more secrets. For the first time, Damian looked at her, really looked, and saw not just the woman he married for business, but a partner who could stand in the fire with him. Good, he said, because this fight, it's ours. That evening, they sat side by side in Damian's study, poring over Sophie's files. She was smart, dangerously smart, but so were they. Elena scanned an email chain where Sophie threatened to leak damaging information if Damian didn't step away from the merger. We can use this, Elena said, her mind racing. A preemptive strike. Show the board and the press she's blackmailing us. Damian nodded. And we take her down legally. But it's not just the board, Elena said softly. Sophie's been coming to my work, my home. She wants to break me. Damian reached for her hand. Then we protect you. All of you. Her heart tightened. It wasn't just the company. It wasn't just the merger. It was them against the world. And they were ready. Days passed in a blur of press conferences, private meetings, and late-night strategy sessions. Elena found strength in Damian's steadiness, and he found comfort in her fierce determination. But one night, as they finally allowed themselves a moment of quiet, Elena's phone buzzed again. A message from Sophie. "You think you know him, but you don't know everything. Watch your back, Elena." Elena shivered. "What don't I know?" she whispered. Damian pulled her close. "We'll face it, together." She leaned into him, knowing the road ahead was dark and full of shadows, but also knowing that for the first time, she wasn't walking it alone. Ghosts from the past. The following morning, the weight of Sophie's threat lingered like a storm cloud. Elena felt it pressing against her chest, the anxiety twisting inside her as she prepared for another day of battles, both public and private. Damian was unusually silent during breakfast, eyes fixed on the city skyline, lost in thought. "Elena," he finally said, voice low, "there's something I need to tell you." She met his gaze, sensing the gravity behind his words. "It's about my father, about why some of his deals were questionable." Her heart pounded. She had expected the scandal, the lawsuits, the financial manipulation, but not this. He swallowed hard. "My father wasn't just ruthless in business," Damian continued, voice tight. "He was dangerous, connected to people I didn't want to know. People who still expect loyalty." Elena's breath hitched. "Do you think Sophie is one of them?" she asked, voice trembling. He nodded slowly. "She's more than that. She's a reminder, a threat." She reached for his hand. "We're in this together." He squeezed her hand back, eyes haunted but resolute. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we face it head on." As the sun rose over the city, Elena realized that love was no longer the only thing at stake. Survival was the first move. The day was heavy with tension, thick enough to suffocate. Elena sat in Damian's office, scrolling through emails flagged by their legal team. Sophie's threats had escalated, damaging leaks, false allegations, and even attempts to sabotage key partnerships. Damian entered, his face grim. "We can't just defend," he said. "We need to take the offensive." Elena nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. "What's the plan?" "We expose Sophie's lies, but more than that, we expose her motives." She frowned. "You think there's more to this?" Damian leaned forward, voice low. "Sophie isn't just trying to hurt me. She's trying to destroy everything my family built." Elena swallowed hard. "Including us." He met her gaze. "Including you." That night, they crafted their strategy. Evidence to counter Sophie's claims. Documents to reveal her own questionable business dealings. But more than paperwork, words to reclaim their narrative. Elena found herself speaking with a new confidence, no longer just the business wife, but a fierce ally. When they finally sat back, exhausted but united, Damian smiled. "Together, we're stronger than she knows." Elena allowed herself a small smile. For the first time in weeks, hope felt possible. The dangerous game. The night had settled over the city like a velvet curtain, but inside the Blackwell penthouse, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Damian and Elena had spent the entire day preparing their counterattack against Sophie Lang, piecing together evidence that exposed her own scandals, shady business dealings and manipulations. But Sophie was no amateur. She wasn't just waiting for their next move, she was orchestrating hers. Elena sat at the grand mahogany dining table, her fingers tapping nervously on the polished surface. The files were spread out before her like a battlefield map, each page a piece of the war they were embroiled in. Damian paced the room, tension coiled tight in his muscles. "We need to be careful," he said. "One wrong step and Sophie will tear us apart." Elena looked up, her eyes blazing with resolve. "We're past careful, Damian. We're in survival mode now." Suddenly the phone rang sharply, slicing through the silence. Damian answered quickly, his expression hardening as he listened. When he hung up, his voice was cold. Sophie's made her move. "What?" Elena asked, heart pounding. She's leaked a private video, one from before we got married. It's doctored, but convincing enough to ruin reputations. Elena swallowed, fighting the bile rising in her throat. How bad is it? Bad enough that the board is already calling for an emergency meeting. She stood, fighting the urge to panic. This isn't just about us anymore, she said quietly. It's about everything you've built. Damian's jaw clenched. We fight back. The emergency board meeting was held in a sleek glass conference room overlooking the city skyline. Damian faced a room full of skeptical faces, board members, investors, and legal advisors, each waiting for him to explain the scandal threatening to topple their empire. He stood tall but weary. Let me be clear, he began. The video is fake. It's a manipulation designed to destroy my reputation and the company's stability. Murmurs spread through the room. Elena watched from the back, standing close but not in the spotlight. She felt the weight of every eye. Damian continued. We are pursuing legal action against the source, and we have evidence of Ms. Lang's attempts to sabotage the merger. One board member narrowed his eyes. How can we trust that this isn't just damage control? Damian met his gaze. Because the truth is on our side, and because I will not allow lies to define this company, or my marriage. The room was silent. Elena felt Damian's hand brush hers briefly, a small, grounding gesture that reminded her they were in this fight together. Later that night, Elena sat alone in the dimly lit living room, replaying the day's events over and over. The city lights blinked through the windows, distant and cold. Her phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. You think you're winning? The game's just beginning. Her stomach twisted. The danger wasn't fading, it was escalating. And Sophie was playing with fire. Damian returned home later, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. He found Elena waiting, a mix of fear and fierce determination in her eyes. We can't let her control us, she said softly. No, he agreed, but we need to be ready for whatever comes next. He pulled her close, his voice low. I'm not losing you, not to her, not to anything. She leaned into him, heart pounding with a mixture of love and fear. Because the dangerous game they were playing had only one rule: survive. The shocking betrayal. The days that followed were a whirlwind of board meetings, media storms, and private confrontations. Elena had never imagined marriage could feel like a battlefield. But with Sophie's shadow looming larger every day, the fight was no longer just about love, it was about survival. Damian sat behind his desk, reviewing confidential reports when Elena entered, her expression grave. There's something you need to see, she said, placing a sealed envelope on the desk. He opened it carefully. Inside were documents, emails, contracts and photos, pointing to a devastating truth. Sophie has an ally inside Blackwell Industries, Elena said quietly. Damian's eyes darkened. Who? She hesitated. One of the board members, someone close to the merger negotiations. His fists clenched. How long? Months. Feeding her information, sabotaging from within. Damian slammed his fist down. We've been stabbed in the back. Elena nodded. And if we don't act fast, everything we fought for will be destroyed. The next day, Damian called an emergency private meeting with the trusted members of his inner circle. We root out the traitor, he ordered, and we protect Elena. The weight of his words settled heavily in the room, but Elena, though shaken, was resolute. I won't be the weakness in this marriage, she declared. I'm as much a part of this fight as you are. Damian looked at her with new respect. Good, he said, because from now on, we're unstoppable. Late that night, Elena received a cryptic text. Trust no one. Even those closest to you have secrets. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. Was the message from Sophie, or worse, from the traitor herself? Questions flooded her mind, but one was clearer than ever. In a war of power, love and betrayal, could she survive without losing herself? Damian found her on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. "I'm not letting anyone hurt you," he vowed. She turned, eyes shining with determination. "Then fight with me." "Not for me." He took her hands in his. Together, and in that moment, they were no longer just husband and wife. They were warriors. The hunt begins. The tension in Blackwell Tower was palpable. Elena and Damian had unleashed their most trusted allies to uncover the traitor threatening to dismantle everything. Every email was scrutinized, every phone call logged, and every meeting monitored. Elena threw herself into the hunt, refusing to be sidelined. She was no longer just the CEO's wife, she was his equal partner in this war. In the sleek surveillance room, Damian's head of security presented the latest findings. "We've traced unauthorized access to sensitive files back to one of the senior board members, Mr. Carlton Hayes." Damian's eyes narrowed. Hayes. I trusted him. Elena clenched her jaw. Clearly he doesn't deserve that trust. That night, Damian and Elena prepared to confront Hayes. The penthouse was tense as they waited for him to arrive. When the doorbell rang, Damian's grip on Elena's hand tightened. The man who entered was calm, too calm. "Gentlemen," Hayes said smoothly, "what is this about?" Damian wasted no time. "We know you've been leaking information to Sophie Lang." Hayes's smile faded. "And if I have, what will you do about it?" Elena stepped forward, voice steady. "We'll make sure you lose everything." The confrontation escalated quickly. Hayes denied everything, but the evidence was damning. Eventually, he slumped in defeat. "I did what I had to do," he muttered bitterly. "Your father's empire destroyed my family. I'm not the villain here." Damian's eyes flashed. "This isn't about revenge. It's about protecting what's ours." Elena's voice softened. "And we won't let your bitterness destroy our future." As Hayes was escorted out, Elena and Damian stood side by side, the storm momentarily quelled. But the war was far from over. That night, Damian held Elena close. "No matter what comes next," he whispered, "we face it together." She nodded, heart swelling with fierce love. Together. Sophie's final gambit. The tension that had gripped the Blackwell Empire was far from over. Though Hayes was out, Sophie's shadow loomed larger than ever. Elena could feel it in every whispered phone call, every cautious glance cast her way. Sophie was desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. One evening, as Damian was away at a crucial meeting, Elena received an unexpected visitor. The doorbell echoed through the penthouse, and when she opened it, there stood Sophie herself, calm, confident, and more dangerous than ever. "Elena," Sophie said with a chilling smile, "I thought it was time we had a little chat." Elena's heart pounded, but her voice was steady. "This isn't over, Sophie." "Oh, sweetheart," Sophie replied, stepping inside. "It's only just begun." The confrontation was a battle of wills. Sophie revealed secrets Damian had tried to bury, truths about his family, his past mistakes, and vulnerabilities he'd hoped to keep hidden. Elena listened, hurt and anger twisting inside her. But beneath it all, a fierce determination rose. Sophie wanted to break them, but Elena wasn't about to let that happen. As Sophie prepared to leave, she whispered one final warning. "Choose carefully, Elena. This marriage is built on lies, and some lies will bury you both." The door closed behind her, but her words echoed in the room. When Damian returned, Elena was waiting, eyes fierce. "We can't run from the past," she said, "but we can decide what it means for our future." He pulled her close. "I'm done hiding," he said. "Then let's fight, for us." Unveiling the truth. The weight of Sophie's visit lingered heavily in the penthouse. Elena stood by the window, staring out at the city lights flickering like distant promises. Damian entered quietly, his expression softer than usual. "We can't keep running from this," he said, voice low but steady. Elena turned to face him. "No, it's time to face everything. Together." They sat down, the space between them charged with unspoken fears and hopes. Damian reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, worn box. Inside were letters, photographs and documents, pieces of a past he'd long hidden. "This is the truth," he said, "about my family, about the mistakes that haunt me." Elena took a deep breath and began to read. Each letter revealed a story of betrayal, sacrifice, and a legacy more complicated than she had imagined. Tears pricked her eyes, but she kept reading, because understanding the past was the only way to build a future. Hours passed. When Elena finally looked up, Damian was watching her, vulnerable and waiting. "I'm sorry for what I didn't tell you," he whispered. She reached for his hand. "We have a chance to write a new story, one that's ours." He smiled, relief and love shining in his eyes. Together. And in that moment, the contract that had started it all no longer mattered. What mattered was the love they were choosing to fight for. Trust on the edge. In the days that followed the unveiling of Damian's hidden past, a fragile calm settled over the penthouse. Yet beneath the surface, tension simmered. A delicate thread of trust woven between Elena and Damian, strained but unbroken. Elena woke early, sunlight streaming softly through the curtains. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, the weight of secrets revealed, the precariousness of their future, and the growing love she dared not let slip away. Damian joined her in the kitchen, the morning quiet broken only by the sound of brewing coffee. "We're walking a tightrope," he said softly. "Every step matters." She met his eyes, determination shining through her own. "I'm not afraid," Elena said, "not when I'm with you." But the peace was shattered that afternoon. Elena's phone buzzed with an urgent message, a leaked document exposing the financial instability of one of Blackwell's key subsidiaries, a scandal Sophie had orchestrated from behind the scenes. Damian's jaw tightened as he read the news. "She's escalating," he growled. Elena nodded, resolve hardening in her eyes. "We fight smarter." That evening, they convened with Damian's trusted advisors, strategizing a counter-offensive to protect their empire and their future. Elena's voice was firm. "We need transparency, with the board and the public." Damian agreed. No more shadows. Together, they drafted a statement acknowledging the issues, promising accountability and reform. The plan was risky, but it was the only way to regain trust. Later, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights, Damian took Elena's hand. "No matter what happens, we face it side by side." She squeezed his hand back, heart swelling. "Always." The public storm. The announcement hit like a thunderclap. Elena and Damian's statement, promising transparency and reform, circulated quickly through media channels, social platforms, and business networks. The response was mixed. Some praised their courage, others waited for the first sign of a misstep. For Elena, the sudden spotlight was overwhelming. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and fiercely protective of the fragile trust they had rebuilt. Damian was her anchor. The boardroom was tense as Damian addressed the assembled directors and investors. "This company stands for more than profit," he declared. "It stands for integrity. We are committed to making things right." Some faces softened, others remained skeptical. But the momentum had shifted. Behind closed doors, Sophie watched from afar, her smile tight with frustration. Her plan was unravelling faster than she anticipated, but she wasn't done yet. One evening, as Elena left the office late, a shadow fell across her path. A masked figure approached, slipping an envelope into her hand before disappearing into the night. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single photo, one that would shake the foundation of her world. Damian was waiting when she got home. She showed him the photo. His face darkened. "This changes everything," he said quietly. The devastating secret. The photo was black and white, grainy but unmistakable. It showed Damian, in an intimate moment with another woman. Not Sophie, someone else. Someone Elena had never seen. Her hands shook as she stared at the image, the room spinning around her. Damian's expression darkened when she showed him. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said, voice heavy. "Who is she?" Elena whispered, hurt piercing her chest. He hesitated. "She's someone from my past, someone I thought was gone." "But why hide her?" Elena's voice cracked. "Because I was trying to protect you," Damian admitted, "and because I wasn't sure if I could let go." Elena felt betrayed, torn between love and doubt. "This changes everything," she said, tears welling. "It doesn't have to," Damian pleaded. "I love you." But love wasn't enough anymore, not without truth. The couple faced the harsh reality. Their marriage was on the edge. Elena had to decide. Fight for a future built on fragile trust, or walk away to save herself. Crossroads. Elena sat alone in the penthouse living room, the photo resting on the table before her like a silent accusation. The city lights outside blurred through her tears, mirroring the chaos inside her heart. Damian stood in the doorway, watching her struggle with the weight of the secret. "I know I've hurt you," he said quietly. "But I need you to understand. I never stopped loving you." She looked up, eyes fierce yet vulnerable. "Love isn't enough when it comes with lies, Damian." He stepped closer, desperation flickering in his eyes. "I'm ready to be honest, to fight for us." Elena's breath caught. The choice was hers, trust him again or walk away before the damage was irreversible. Hours passed as they talked through pain, fears and hope. Elena's resolve hardened. "I want the truth," she said firmly. "Everything." Damian nodded. No more secrets. In that fragile moment, their marriage faced its greatest test. Would honesty be the bridge or the breaking point? Confessions and choices. The penthouse was cloaked in silence, save for the soft ticking of the clock and the distant hum of the city below. Elena sat across from Damian, her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on his. "This isn't just about the photo," she said slowly. "It's about everything you didn't tell me. The lies that built this marriage." Damian's jaw tightened. He ran a hand through his hair, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "You're right," he admitted. "I tried to protect you, from my past, from my mistakes. But I see now that I only pushed you away." He took a deep breath, his voice raw. "The woman in that photo, her name is Isabella. She was my first love. Before my father's business swallowed me whole, before the contracts and the mergers, I thought she was gone, but she never really left my life." Elena's heart pounded as she listened. The man she loved was revealing his darkest chapter. "I never wanted to hurt you," Damian continued. "But I was scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of losing myself." Tears welled in Elena's eyes, a mix of pain and empathy swirling inside her. "So why keep it all a secret?" she whispered. "Because I didn't trust myself to make the right choice," he confessed. "Because I didn't know if I could let go of the past and fully embrace what we have." The room felt charged, raw and vulnerable. Elena reached across the table, taking his hand gently. "We can't rewrite the past," she said softly. "But we can decide what happens next." Damian's eyes searched hers, desperate for hope. "Are you willing to fight for us?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "I'm scared, but yes, I want to believe in us." They leaned across the table, closing the distance with a tentative, hopeful kiss. That night, beneath the city lights, Elena and Damian made a silent vow. No more secrets, no more walls between them. Their marriage, once forged in business and necessity, now began to heal with truth and love. But the road ahead would not be easy, because Isabella was still out there, and Sophie's shadow still threatened to pull them apart. Facing the past. The invitation arrived unexpectedly, slipped beneath Elena's door, a sleek black envelope embossed with gold. Inside, a card, an exclusive gala at one of the city's most prestigious hotels. Signed simply, Isabella. Elena's heart raced. Damian noticed immediately when she showed him. "She wants a showdown," he said grimly. Elena nodded. "I need to face her. For us." The gala glittered with opulence, chandeliers casting warm light over polished marble, guests in elegant gowns and tailored tuxedos. Elena stepped inside, every eye drawn to her, some curious, others wary. And then she saw her, Isabella. Graceful, poised, the very image of the woman in the photo. Their eyes met across the crowded room. A silent challenge. Elena felt a mix of fear and determination swell within her. Approaching Isabella, Elena's voice was steady. "I'm Elena. I'm the woman Damian chose." Isabella smiled, a flicker of sadness and something unreadable in her eyes. "Then we have much to discuss." The conversation was tense, filled with unspoken histories and raw emotions. Isabella revealed her own pain, a love lost, betrayal, and a life shaped by choices and regrets. Elena listened, realizing that Isabella wasn't the villain she feared, but a woman caught in the same storm. Yet the threat remained, because the past wasn't finished with them. As the night ended, Elena and Isabella parted, not as enemies, but as wary allies bound by a shared love and complicated truth. Love redeemed. The dawn broke softly over the city skyline, casting a warm golden glow through the penthouse windows. After a night filled with uneasy conversations and fragile alliances, Elena stood beside Damian, both exhausted, yet resolute. The gala with Isabella had been a turning point. What began as a confrontation had evolved into a tentative understanding, a recognition that love in its many forms could heal even the deepest wounds. In the quiet of the morning, Damian reached for Elena's hand, his eyes reflecting a new kind of vulnerability. "We survived the storm," he said softly. "But the real journey begins now." Elena squeezed his hand, her heart full. "We've been through hell and back, but I believe in us, in what we can build together." The weeks that followed were filled with honest conversations and rebuilding trust. Damian made amends with his past, severing toxic ties, exposing Sophie's lies, and embracing the truth with courage. Elena's strength and grace became the foundation for their renewed bond. Together, they faced the media's scrutiny and the board's demands with unity and transparency. Their marriage was no longer just a contract. It was a partnership forged in fire and sealed by love. One crisp evening, as the city glittered below, Damian surprised Elena with a quiet dinner on their balcony. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple, elegant ring. "Elena," he began, voice steady but full of emotion. "This time, no contracts, no secrets, just us." Tears welled in Elena's eyes as she nodded, overwhelmed. "Yes," she whispered. "Forever." They embraced beneath the stars, the city's heartbeat echoing their own. A new chapter had begun, one defined not by power or revenge, but by love, trust, and hope. The end.